Good morning, everyone, from what is very gloomy in the northeast. While everybody's joining, pop your name and where you come from into the chat. And if you want to ask any questions as well, pop those into the Q&A and I'll do my best at the end to answer those. Okay, it looks like most people who are going to join are here, so I'll make a start. Thanks very much for joining me on this Sunday morning for my session, Make It with Minibooks. So my name is Claire Seckham. I'm a languages teacher and a consultant up here in the Northeast. I currently teach Spanish in 2 primary schools, as well as being involved with things like BBC Bite Size and Oak National Academy as well. All the mini books I'm going to be showing you today, you can find instructions for and more about on my blog, and you can see the URL of my blog just there. It's called Changing Phase, so it's changing-phase.blogspot.com. And also I'm going to be showing you some resources. Those resources can be found on my website, which is called Lightbulb Languages. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter name is at the bottom there. So without further ado, let's get started. So our objectives of the session this morning, reading and writing quite often in primary languages are the poor relations of speaking and listening. And I'm going to show you how you can use mini books to encourage reading, to encourage independent writing, and also to develop dictionary skills. I'm going to show you the basics and I'm going to tell you how I've used them as well. And hopefully it'll give you lots of ideas that you can use in your next lessons. So many of the CPD sessions that are available to teachers often focus on the use of new technology. And there are times, aren't there, when you think that for an effective lesson, you have to have technology. It's fundamental to your lesson. But of course, we need to remember that it is all about teach and not tech. They are, after all, just one letter different. So judicious and appropriate use of technology can really magically enhance our MFL teaching. But a series of sit down and make a PowerPoint lessons, which are conceived merely to tick a box on a scheme of work, are ultimately going to do more harm than good. So it's all about using new things appropriately and keeping a careful eye on the long term. We shouldn't use something because it's there, but because it's the right solution to a given problem. There was a time, of course, around the Middle Ages when books were new technology, and they were given a real boost in 1450 by Gutenberg and his printing press. So books may be considered old hat by some people now, but for me, they are always going to be magic. Their feel and their smell, and of course, their words are always going to take me to another place. So why should we use mini books in the classroom? First of all, they're small and they're non-threatening. They're very motivating for children. They're also great for your classroom displays. You can use them to make your own tailor-made reading materials. They can contribute to that enjoyment of language learning. They also enable artistic as well as linguistic creativity. And so they are cross-curricular with art and design. They can also promote intercultural understanding. And importantly, they promote listening and following instructions, as well as dexterity and fine motor skills. So folding and using scissors, for example. They also make a nice change from writing in exercise books. And of course, they are a break from tech as well. So all this talk about mini books and how they can help with reading and writing, but what exactly are they? And this is my working definition of what a mini book is. It's a short piece of writing in the form of a book or in another format that lends itself to being opened and read. It can be printed or handwritten, and it's usually illustrated or decorated. So let's have a look then at the different kinds of mini books that you can make and some ideas of what you can do with them. First of all, starting off with the basic mini book. The basic mini book is made with one sheet of A4 paper. You cut it once and it makes a little book with turnable pages. If you want the instructions for this one, they're on the blog, and I've also done a YouTube video of it as well. So this is the very first mini book that I ever used, and it explores gender and articles, and it also introduces dictionary use for year 3. I got the idea from a book which was called American Bilingual Mini Book Series, and it was the number 1 of that series. And that is, as it says, bilingual. So I took the English out, but kept the Spanish. So we read the story together, and then the children use the bilingual dictionary to help them to find nouns to put into their own versions. And each page then shows something that they've found in the dictionary that they can see in the story. This is the example of one year 3 girl, and she decided her book was going to be all about insects. So she says, I can see a ladybird and I can see a butterfly. And of course, she had to use the dictionary to find out if those words were masculine or feminine so that she could pick the right word for a or an. Here's an example of a year 4 French mini book. So we'd been working on free time activities and saying how well you do them. We had played battleships to practice building the sentences, and then they chose some of those battleship sentences to illustrate in their mini book. This is an example of a mini book that I use for reading and understanding, and I do this with Key Stage 1, and of course they then have to colour it in. This is an example of a mini book that you can use for reading and understanding with a response required by the children to demonstrate that they've understood. So they have to read the description of the hair and eyes that's there, and then put the hair and eyes onto the blank head to show that they've understood. Now, at the beginning of year 4, I work on days of the week and we read The Hungry Caterpillar. And we then focus on the repeated elements of the story, which is those little pages with the holes in the middle. And we switch to the hungry monster because monster's diet is going to be more varied than a caterpillar's. And I give each table a different day of the week to write about. And they use the structure of the little pages to write about what the monster ate on that day. And they use the dictionaries to find some vocabulary. I then put all of their sentences into this mini book template, photocopy it onto A3, and then the following week we fold the book and we read it together. And the children then have to use their dictionaries the other way around to find out what the other pairs said. So the possibilities for mini books are endless. They can even be non-fiction. This is one that I made some time ago for the Football World Cup, for example. If I'm doing a pre-printed version of a mini book, I make it in Microsoft Publisher. I make nearly all my resources in Publisher. And I have a template worked out with the rotations built in and a dotted line for the cut, which is already marked on as well. Now, variation on that is the pocketbook. The pocketbook is like an enhanced version of the original mini book. They have 8 pocketed pages and a front and back cover. And you can also put a decorated cover on as well if it's just made of paper. So this is just one example. Think of all the different things that you could put into the pockets. So children could make them as a writing activity, or they could swap with their friends as a reading activity. So on this one, each page has got a picture of some family members stuck on it, and some cards are written with descriptions of those family members. So you have to match up the cards with the family members and put them in the pocket. Now, I don't know about you, but the children I teach make fans all the time anyway, so I thought that I would harness that. And the fan, we use one piece of A4 paper cut in half lengthways and then stick the two strips together to make one big long strip, and then fold it into the fan. And this can be used to practice writing single words. So it's good for beginner learners, it's good for special needs children, and it's great for Key Stage 1. So I do this at the end of Key Stage, at the end of Year 1, and we've put on it lots of the different words that the children have learned during Year 1. So if children can fold a piece of paper into a fan, then they'll be able to make a concertina book. So the concertina itself is made of half a sheet of A4 that's been folded in half lengthways. So each child has one big long strip that's half of A4. Then we fold it in half again, and half again to divide it into its 8 sections. Then unfold it and just reverse some of the folds to make it a concertina. Then you can write on 6 of the sections, but not the top and not the bottom, because that's where you're going to stick your pictures or your cutouts. So these particular mini books are ideal for anything that involves a sequence, because they supply those ready-made steps for you to write on. So they'd be great for recipes, so you could have foodstuffs and utensils at the top and bottom, or you could use them for a more formal piece of writing that requires the use of time sequencing phrases. So the examples here, you've got the rabbit coming out of the magic bag, and on each of the steps there are lots of other things that are in the magic bag as well. Then the one with the little boy, who has the very long neck when you unfold it, that's all about daily routine. So you've got one stage of his daily routine on each of the steps there. We once used this method of making a mini book to make some Christmas cards for our link school in Spain. So we made the concertina, and then we stuck half a Christmas present on each one and sent those over to our pen friends who liked them so much that they made some and sent them back as well. Then Noah's Ark, this is one that I do with Year 2. This one was devised by my friend Rachel Smith. And so we make the Noah's Ark, and the concertina is the steps going up into the ark. Then this is one that's very popular with Year 5, because Year 5 science is space and planets. So I also teach space and planets in Spanish and in French as well. And so we do half the planet on the top, half the planet on the bottom. And on the concertina, they choose 6 of the planets and do as full a description as they can on that particular step. Now, accordeon books are again a variation on the theme. They're a variation on the theme of the concertina book. The covers and the pages are integral, and they can be shaped. So when I made this one, it was supposed to start off being a sandwich, but it came out looking more like a burger. And so inside, you've got all the different things that are inside the burger. Another variation on the concertina or the accordion is the line of buildings, and this starts life as a paper zigzag, which you then shape into the houses and cut the doors in. And as long as the doors are big enough, there's plenty of scope for writing inside the doors. If you're making these ones, I recommend using thin card, as with paper, the doors tend to go a bit curly, especially if the children are using felt tips to colour them in. And the line of people books works along similar lines to the line of buildings, but the cutting for this one is a little bit more complex. And I had to make a template for this one because Year 3s found it quite tricky. And imagine all the different areas of personal information that you could use this for. And you can decorate the people, you can put stuck on hair and everything on if you like. Now, an Aztec Codex is essentially a concertina style book, and the Aztecs filled them with glyphs painted in red, blue, yellow, and green. Unfortunately, many were destroyed by the Spaniards when they conquered the area that's now known as Mexico in the early 16th century, and not many remain, unfortunately. The good thing about this paper version is that it's fun to make and you can write on both sides. And it's essentially made with one piece of A4. So you actually end up with the equivalent of 2 sides of A4 to write on. Now, fan books are a group of identical shapes which are fixed together with a butterfly clip. And I made these ones using the auto shapes function in PowerPoint so that I knew that all of my shapes were the same size. You could use this one, for example, for rooms in the house. So you have house shapes, and each one is a different room in the house. Perhaps you could have an aeroplane, and each shape is a different day of the holiday. Perhaps the one that you can see pictured here is all about likes and dislikes, which is why I chose the heart shape. Now, triaramas have been very popular. They're essentially a 3D scene which is made on a square of paper. And again, I have a video on my YouTube channel of how to make these. They're really good for writing about something that can be drawn in a long line because you have the diagonal, the long diagonal on your square of paper for the image. So perhaps it could be a line of people, a line of animals. We use them for places in town. It could be food on a supermarket shelf, for example. There are lots of ways you could use these. The children really like seeing their art being made 3D. They are, though, a bit tricky to display. It's easy, though, to stick them back to back, and then you have a flat surface to sit onto the wall, to stick onto the wall. The foldable artist book is a bit like two mini triaramas side by side, and this also can be stuck back to back. So the section there that starts off with samedi that's in green and the one that says jeudi that's in blue, if you stick those two together back to back, you then get a flat surface that you can stick onto the wall. There's also a diorama, which again gives you the 3D effect. And because it has a flat back, it's much easier to display than the triorama. It also gives you more space to write on as well. Now, these foldable maps are a complicated fold, but this can be part of the challenge. And it works in the same way as those little pocket tourist maps that you can buy. And we use them in year 6 to practice the names of places in town, saying what there is and what there isn't. When you fold them up, they actually make the shape of a house. And some of the girls made the outside of their map into a house, saying that the map was what you could see outside of the house. There's also lift the flap books. These are really good for questions and answers or pairs of words or words and pictures. And there's lots of different ways that you can do them and different ways that you can cut out the doors as well. This particular one is to practice telling the time. So this child has put the time decorated on the outside of the flap. And then when you lift the flap, you can see the time written in words. This is a variation on the theme of a Lift the Flap book. This is the Fat Cat from a children's book that I enjoyed in the 1970s. And when you lift those flaps which have been stuck on, you can see the different things that the fat cat ate. Now, envelope books are so called because they have an envelope stuck on the inside front cover, and that's where you store all the different pictures that are going to help you to read the book. So as you can see on the first page there, it says, J'ai les yeux bleus, I have blue eyes. And the idea is that children get the little pictures out and do a little sort, and they find all of the pictures where somebody has blue eyes. Then when they turn the page onto the next page, I think that one says, I have brown hair. So they put all the pictures back together again, and this time they find all of the people who have brown hair. This is the Starburst. I've made it in different colors here so you can see more what it's all about. So it's again squares of paper folded into such a way that you can then stick them back to back to back, and they fold up very small. So you could in fact put a whole class's work into one of these and it would fold up into quite a small little section. My daughter, who's just done A level, did one of these for a project piece in her history. You could also make a tower of learning, which is good to sit on the children's table to help them in their work. I suppose it works in much the same way as the VCOP pyramids that you might remember. So on this one, it's got all the different vocabulary and some examples of sentences as well that year 6 would need to say who's going, where they're going, and when they go as well. Then These are called Valentine mini books, but only because the first one I made was for Valentine's Day, and you can see that one in the center there. So when it's closed, you've got two halves of the heart and they meet. But when you open it, and you can see that in the bottom right corner there, when you open it, you've got space to write inside. So I've also made versions of this. They've got a Christmas tree, an egg, a star, and a smiley face. And I also have one that's a bell as well for the cloche volante if you teach French. Then the hexagon book. This is another one which is good for questions and answers or matching things. So we have again clocks on the outside and the time is written on the inside. So you pick up the hexagon and you can see what that time is underneath. These are story towers, and to slot the cards together, we measured 2 centimeters in from the corner and then cut a 2 centimeter slot on each card. And actually, we found it was a lot more stable if both cards that you were slotting together had their slot. And we used these, this is again in year 6, we got some blank postcards and they used it to copy up their writing where they were comparing a town in the present and the same town in the past, and to put pictures on as well. Now, People Pillars is the result of a challenge from Janet Lloyd, who had been developing some people pillar poems. And this involved finding lots of adjectives to describe one noun. So in this case, it was a clown. And then you write the resulting descriptions in a column shape. And it's a great way of practicing descriptions, especially for adjectival position, adjectival agreement. And of course, it would also work for other writing about people as well. So on my blog, I've got the template for that, and I've drawn on the clown's hat and the hair and colored in the feet, for example. So you can make it very individual. Then this is the back to back to back book. It's another one that's made out of identical shapes. And the thing with these identical shapes is they must be symmetrical so that they can be folded in half lengthwise and have the different halves stuck together. These would be quite good to have suspended, to have hanging if you're short of display space. Now, many books don't have to be just one piece of paper. There are ways of making your own small books to have at hand for children who finish their work early or who fancy doing some reading in their own time. And I got these small photo albums at Staples when it was still open. And the stories inside are printouts of either PowerPoint stories that I've made or also stories that I've written using Storybird and Storyjumper. If you haven't had a look at Storybird and Storyjumper, I'd really recommend it. Storybird is storybird.com. It's a website that has collaborated with lots of different artists. So you supply the words, but then you can choose from the images that all the artists have provided. With Storyjumper, you use all their little clip arts and backgrounds to build your own pictures, and you can also upload your own photographs or your own artwork into those as well. And that's storyjumper.com. So I hope I've showed you how you can use lots and lots of different kinds of mini books to encourage reading and independent writing and dictionary skills. And I really hope that you enjoy experimenting and enjoy creating. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and if you have any questions, I would be very pleased to answer them. So I will have a look down into Q&A. So Oliver says, in the pandemic virtual world, which digital tools are you using to emulate your mini books physical ideas? I have to say, now that we're back in school, I am able to work a lot more with the children. And for example, I folded a mini book with year 2 on Thursday. So I demonstrated it to them first. Actually got a round of applause from them, which was quite unexpected. And then I folded one at the same time as them. And I'm lucky at the moment that I can go around and work with the children. There are some digital tools available to make mini books as well. I'm not exactly sure which ones they are at the moment. They tend to come and go. But if you do find one, what you want to check is that you can put accented characters in, because on some of them they're designed for people who teach English, and so you can't put accented characters on. Some of them give you 4 little pages per A4 sheet, which you then cut up and staple down the side. So have a little search, because they come and go. I'm not exactly which ones are available at the moment. Zenobia says, would you be happy to share the publisher mini-book template? Yes, I would. If you just contact me via Lightbulb Languages, I can email that out to you. Andorra says, would you be happy to share your templates? Are they available to buy from TES? I don't offer anything for sale on TES. All of the templates for all the mini books that you've just seen are available free on my blog. So as I said, it's called changing-phase.blogspot.com. There's a tab at the top that says mini books, and if you click on there, you get the great big long list of all the different mini books. Click on that individual blog post and you can then print out the templates. It gives you all the instructions and everything, so no need to pay anything to Times Educational Supplement. Maria says, would you be, oh, so I've already said that. Where's Maria? How often do your children do these kinds of activities? I would say usually it depends on the unit of work that we're doing. With year 2, I do quite a few, because with year 2, I focus on a lot of intercultural work. So we make Aztec Codex. We've just made a mini book. We're putting South American flags in there, for example. I've just done triaramas with year 6 as an end of a part of unit. And that was where they were telling me, in my town there is, and also describing their town as well. So I would say probably once a term, is you will find that, I mean, I have an hour for my lessons, and it takes longer than an hour for the children to complete these. It usually takes 2 lessons. So because you've got to do the image and the writing, I get them to do the writing first, and then doing the pictures is a bit of a reward afterwards. Andorra, yes, I'll share the blog again slower. So it's changing, then hyphen, phase, because I changed phase from secondary to primary 13 years ago. So changing hyphen phase, then .blogspot.com, as it's a Google Blogger blog. So changing hyphen phase .blogspot.com. So everything's on there. So what other questions do we have? How are we doing for time? Right. So that's that one. Brigitte says, how does it work with teens or adults? I haven't worked in a secondary school for quite some time, but I do have colleagues who have made the different kinds of mini books with their secondary students. And of course, for secondary students, just like for primary students, it's a bit of a novelty. It's motivating because it's something that they're crafting, that they're making. They get the opportunity to be artistic. It's good for display and so on. I even have colleagues I know who have used them in A-level, and they've used them to do biographies of characters in the books that they've been studying, for example. So I think mini books are good for any stage and any age of learner. So I think, am I right in thinking that's all the questions? Does anybody else have any other questions about the different mini books? I think I do just about have time to show you how to make the basic one. I have a piece of paper just here. So you take a piece of A4, fold it in half as though you're making a birthday card, and then fold it in half the same direction again, like you're making a long skinny bookmark shaped birthday card. Then you need to fold it in half in the opposite direction, because what you're doing is you're marking it into its 8 pages. There we are. So when you make it with A4, that's the size that your mini book page is going to be. It's an 1/8 of A4. Like I said, I've made them with A3 as well. Then open out the last 2 folds, and then what you want to do with the fold at the top, because if you do it with that part, it's going to fall apart. So fold at the top. I'm just going to tear it for now, but you can cut it as well. You want to cut down from the fold at the top in the center, down that fold line until you reach the center, right, where the two folds cross. When you unfold it, you've got a piece of paper with a hole in the middle. You fold it in the opposite direction so that you've got 4 pages in a row. And by the way, if you're doing a pre-printed one, you should always have the print on the outside, because then it'll work much better later. Then one end in each hand, push them together, okay, till it stops, fold it round. And if you folded it better than me, you have a little book that's got its turnable pages. So once I've demonstrated that to children, I've had year 6 children who I've shown that to in year 2, and they make them at home. One of them had made one at home about the environment, and she'd put inlays on that folded out and all sorts, and they love doing it in their own time as well. I can see that there's some more questions that have popped up. Let's have a look in the chat, because I think some of them were in there. Yeah, Marion says, would Ofsted query drawing and folding time in a language lesson? I know my SLT might in an observation. I think what you've got to make clear with an activity like this is the the whole child skills, the cross-curricular skills. I've got a post on my blog actually called In Defense of Minibooks that shows all the different ways that it can help children that aren't necessarily language teaching. So with my year 2s, it was showing them how to put the piece of paper on their table, match up the corners, and do a nice crisp fold. And that's something, of course, that they're going to need throughout their life. Also using a pair of scissors correctly. Some of that age of children also can't use scissors correctly yet. Things like drawing with a pencil first and not going straight in with the pens. It's just the very small things like that that impact on the whole curriculum and that we can practice via the language. I would say if I was doing it in an observed lesson, I would demonstrate the mini book first and say, we're going to make one of these. You're going to put this, 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 and this on it. You're going to do your writing first. When you've done your writing, you can make one of these and put your images on, and then the children would set about doing their writing. So I think I would use it as the carrot to make them do their work, and then of course in the next lesson they'd be able to make their own. So that's my personal opinion, but I would definitely focus on the whole child skills that you can get from this sort of activity. It's also great, I know, because art doesn't get much time in the curriculum, just like languages doesn't. So again, I would say, see what boxes you can tick on the art curriculum as well by doing these. So are there any other questions? Yes, Pamela, I'll show my first slide again for contact details. Just bear with me a second. If I can work out how to do it. Lost my mouse, there it is. So the easiest way to get hold of me is just on the contact page of Lightbulb Languages, and the emails all come through to me. So just clicking back. There we are. And I'll just share that again if possible. There. Okay, so you should be able to see. Yeah, you should be able to see it. So it doesn't give you a great deal apart from my Twitter address. But there's my blog again. And again, if you want to contact me, then on Lightbulb Languages, on the buttons down the side, click on contact, and you can send me an email that way. That's the easiest way, or you can tweet me, of course. So let's just see if we've got any more questions before we finish. The other website, Brigitte, for images other than Storybird, it's called Story Jumper. And it's been a long time actually since I used it. So I just went on this morning to check that it was still there, and it definitely still is. So you build your page, you you can paste in a different background, you can build little characters, there's lots of different little props, and then you put a little box and put your text in. And actually with Story Jumper, you can get your own books printed as well. So I definitely recommend having a little play with that. I haven't used it so much with the actual turning page book in class, but I've screen captured the images that I've made and put those into PowerPoint slides and put those into little mini books as well. So it's definitely worth having a play. It's something fun to use. So are there any other questions at all? Oh, that's good news, Maria, that they asked you to do more things like that. I think definitely for year 6, they have so much, and as far as we know, SATs are back on, aren't they? So year 6 are being bombarded with maths and English from all sides again. And so I say to my year 6, this is something really nice to do just for a little bit, if you like, of time out, just for something a little bit different, so that they can just take a breather and just learn in a slightly different way. I think so, particularly for year 6, it's a very good idea. So are there any other questions? I'm just keeping an eye on both of the boxes here. Oh, that's good, Olivier, that you're ready to explore. I would recommend having a practice first at home so that you know what you're doing. And I say with a class, I demonstrate it to them first. I always have one that I've made as well so that they know what they're aiming for, like with the Noah's Ark, for example. And then I do it again with them and we all fold it together. And I always have a few spare because there's always at least one that goes wrong somehow. Usually if it's cutting, they cut on the wrong bit, or they misinterpret the instructions and fold their paper the wrong way, for example. So always have just a few spare just in case. But you'll usually find that there's a couple of children who are really good at this sort of thing and can go around helping people for you. And that's really good for them as well. I once had a year 6 class that had one girl in it who found Spanish really tricky, but she was very artistic and she got the folding straight away. And she was my helper who went round helping all of the other children, which was excellent for her. So does anybody else have any questions about minibooks? I can't see any. Yes, so on YouTube, I've put the triarama, the basic mini book, and the concertina book as well. Okay, I think that looks like all the questions answered, everybody. You can quickly put it into the chat if you have another one. Do we have any more questions? That's great. Well, thanks everybody for joining me. Am I thinking to do face-to-face sessions for teachers? I have done and can do. Bearing in mind, though, that I live in the Northeast, a long way away from a lot of people. So yes, that's something I can definitely consider. And I have done this session face-to-face before. Thanks, everybody. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. So have a little rummage around my blog, have a look at all the different sorts there and all the photographs and the instructions. If you have any problem downloading any of the templates, just let me know. I can always sort it out for you. So thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you for all your very kind comments. And I look forward to hearing about all the different mini books that you've made. I promise once you start, you won't be able to stop. Okay, bye for now. Bye.